Doge continues to be discussion about whether there was too much cut. And of course, it dovetails politically for the midterms with the question of whether rural hospitals are going to close, et cetera. Veterans Department now has moved from like 80,000 proposed job cuts to down to 30,000, still a big number, but seemingly a reflection of a recalibration, either substantively, politically, or both, about whether these cuts, as originally conceived, are sensible. So, Dan, is this going to be an issue between now and the midterms that the White House has to adjust on, or is this just like a short-term thing?
No, and look, I give the administration credit that they are very politically smart and they keep their ear very low to the ground. I think it's one of their great political attributes. We talked about when the real lives of real people are impacted, what would they do? And at least with the VA, there are an increasing number of stories of the wait times getting longer, customer service is getting worse, there's a shortage of nurses, just go on and on. That's not me. That is people calling members of Congress. When you have problems with the VA, that's what you do. You call your representatives to ask for help. And I think the White House is getting all this incoming. And the question is just between now and let's say the end of the year, how many changes are they going to override and fix? And look, good for them, right? Like it's maddening we've had to go through this, but if they will undo a lot of this stuff and get back to serving people, you know.
Yeah. Here's what I'd say. I've grown really weary of how the narrative about how much you care about something is directly correlated to the number of bureaucrats you hire. The VA has been plagued with problems for years. And so to just, Doug Collins is flipping over stones over there trying to get to the bottom of a lot of things. And I've had a couple of conversations with Doug about this. I think they're doing a great job. They're focused on actually serving veterans instead of just hiring people for the sake of hiring people and not focusing on the mission at hand. So I
agree with you, but why have they decided that 50,000 people who are going to be fired aren't going to be fired?
Yeah, Sean,
well, no, because it has to do with, from my understanding, and I haven't dug deep on this one, but I think it has to do with the process. So they're using reductions in forces and other attrition measures to take care of the current workforce. I think we'll see how further it goes, but also remember, it is there's one thing for Elon Musk and some folks to look on the outside. Doug, who has served and understands the system very well, I think for him to go in and make a better assessment of what those functions are and where people are needed or not needed is right sizing the ship. And that's what
it's a pretty big overshooting of the runway.
I mean, it's not like you came in and said we're going to lay off 1,000 and actually now it's going to be 750 because it was 10 in this department. It was at
50,000.
80,000. Hold on a second. They never gave an explanation for why 80,000.
Correct.
Ever.
Just all vagaries.
Nothing was put out. It was a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Now it's 30,000. Dude, that's a huge.
That's the size of a large Iowa town.
Name me one Fortune 1000 company that would make a U-turn of that size, and the entire management wouldn't be fired.
But I will say this, there does need to be a further explanation. I will agree to that. But right now we're going off one story saying that this is the thing. I believe
not a story, it's an administration.
But the further explanation should come simultaneous with this announcement.
Fair enough.
But it didn't. So that's what Dan and I are saying. And again, I believe that this is going to be a huge problem for them, in part because of the substance, but in part because the press and the Democrats will never let it go. Everything that goes wrong in America is going to be attributed by the press and the Democrats to a Doge cut. Everything. And the administration brings it on itself to some extent by saying, oh, we're going from 80 to 30. No explanation.
Look, in some instances, the Democrats are unhinged and unrealistic. And in some instances, folks, I see it in the chat. Get ready for it. They're right. They're 100% right.
Yeah. If I relied on the VA for my health care, I'd be super curious to know why they're going from 80 to 30. And if I cared about efficiency, I might be upset.
And by the way, why 30?
I want an explanation. Exactly.
Yeah.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.